Hey, the Bloody Elbow 6 round post fight show is back for UFC Fight Night Jedrzejczyk versus Penne, UFC Fight Night Berlin, UFC Fight Night 69, I believe. All those things. We're back here to break down the fights immediately after they've happened. I'm here joined by Tom Grant, longtime Bloody Elbow contributor this time from the MMA Prospectus with me. Nate's out of town. He's on vacation, so Tom stepped in to do the post-fight show with me. Um, First of all, if you're looking for the 6th round of the main event, Jedrzejczyk versus Penne, you're an idiot, and there's no 6 rounds in MMA, and
You've been
that's
had, son.
yeah,
What we're
yeah.
trying
You
to say.
you got fooled. So everybody else like our video with the thumbs up, because no doubt a whole bunch of people are going to come crawling through here looking for free UFC fights on YouTube and be pissed when this is not that. Anyway, on that note, thoughts on this fight night card, Tom?
It was outstanding. I mean, like that was as good as like middle of the day MMA gets, and this is exactly what Fight Pass cards should be, like down to a
Yeah.
T. This is what they need to be. Stock it full of good regional fighters, good prospects, and good like fights. And I mean, like I have no complaints about this entire card.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. There were a lot of great finishes. It was high action, great pace. I mean, that's the thing that like really comes across is that, they started this thing just 5 hours ago and we're done. And we're not in that 6.5, 7 hour grind that we tend to get, especially out of Fox Sports One cards.
Yeah, I'm
That is just soul sucking.
it's fantastic. Like the Fight Pass pacing has gotten a lot better. We're not getting like 10 ad of the same ads in a row in between fights. They're getting the fights out there. I'm actually going to the UFC in Chicago show that's going to be on Fox, and I'm kind of dreading the fact that I'm going to spend like 8 hours in that arena
Yeah,
because
it's rough.
yeah, because all the commercial breaks and stuff just slow everything down. We had just great high action fights, and when the fights ended early, they were just able to like get the guys in the back warm and run them out there.
Yeah, it was a great pace, great show. So let's start at the top. Obviously, on the tip of your tongue, main event thoughts. Jedrzejczyk, still Joanna champion.
If Jedrzejczyk offers you a necklace, fucking take it. That's all. That's my takeaway from this fight.
Yeah, do not turn down her jewelry at all. Those are like the nicest gifts that she's gonna give you. You might as well enjoy them
Yeah.
because from there on, it's all downhill.
From there on, it's all shins to the liver and elbows to the nose.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was just brutally dominant. Penne, I think it says something in a fight always when like Penne gets a takedown that lasts for like 5 seconds and everybody's like, "Oh, Penne's back in it. She got that like takedown almost that landed almost, or she got back control for 5 seconds at the end of a round. She's back in the fight."
Yeah, no, she's not. No,
No, it was brutal.
it was like all credit to Penne because she is tough as hell. That was an incredible beating that she took. And while I didn't think she was back in the fight at all, like at the end of the second round when she like threw her leg over, I mean she was working on like not really a flying triangle, but like a sitting triangle
Mhm.
technique. And I don't think it was gonna work even if there was more time. But like after 2 rounds of that, she was still trying to find a way to win, which is just like outstanding. She wasn't like completely like broken at any point during this fight. I think she was like she was willing to fight, just like the body just kind of broke down around her.
Oh yeah, no, Penne is tough as hell. I mean, it's the kind of performance like I was running the Twitter account and I said on there, this is the kind of performance that can like take years off your life. Like when you're that tough and you're taking that kind of beating, you know that like Penne is tough, and that's almost a case in this fight of being too tough for your own good because it was just her body was getting broken down more and more with every passing minute.
And that's on the corner. Like that's
Yeah.
on the corner to call. I was kind of getting on this, but I mean, we just saw it with Nate Marquardt's coaches, like it's some like listening to their fighter and just being like, no, you're done. Like that's it, fight's over. And you see it in other combat sports. You don't see it as much in MMA, where coaches are very willing to just pack it up at like when it's clear their fighter has nothing left in them but like 5 more minutes of beating. Um, they're very willing to just call it a fight. And we haven't really seen that in MMA yet. And I'm not entirely sure why. I think that's because of like the tough man origins of the sport still. Like that.
Well, I was gonna say, I think one of the things we saw out of that Whitman debacle was that how deeply ingrained that culture is, in that the athletic commission would not actually let Whitman stop the fight in between or during the rounds. Like
Yeah.
they actively stopped him from stopping the fight while the rounds were going on. So like when you have that kind of systemic, the corner cannot stop the fight, we will not let the corner stop the fight culture, it's really hard as a corner to, I think, take that extra step and be like, no, I've got to stop it no matter what.
Yeah, and it makes it really hard because then you basically have to stop it in the corner, like in between rounds, and it has to be the fighter saying they're done at that point.
Yep.
And I mean, even talking about like, there's the big, like in MMA, there's this big stigma of like tapping to strike still. And this idea that like quitting on your stool or like having your corner called is like akin to that in some way. But in a lot of ways, like, really, what did Jessica Penne gain by going out there for that third round? Like, we already respected the hell out of her for the like living through the second round. She didn't get anything out of that third round. There was really like, it was fantastic for Jedrzejczyk, but like from a perspective of like, if I was one of Penne's trainers, like that really didn't benefit her in any way.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, but anyway, let's move on because we don't want to get. I mean, I still want to like have the contact high of that fight. That's still like the main thing I want to take away from that. So, co-main event: Tatsuya Kawajiri, Dennis Seaver. Maybe not like the action fest of all time, but it was a pretty enjoyable back and forth fight. I thought like I loved how much time they did get to spend actually wrestling against one another.
Yeah, no, Dennis Seaver's a sneaky good wrestler, and we kind of saw that early when he was just shutting down Kawajiri's single leg game.
Yep.
And then as soon as Kawajiri started switching up the grips and switching up the takedowns, once he was in, Dennis Seaver started hitting the mat. So it was really nice to see a veteran like Kawajiri make an in-fight adjustment and for it to win him a fight. I mean, it wasn't compared to other stuff we had going on in this card, it wasn't the most action-packed, but it was still a pretty like nice, like little like MMA wrestling battle.
Yeah. After that, or before that, Peter Sabota, he looked fantastic against Steve Kennedy. I mean, Kennedy, he was a short notice call up, so obviously it's a fight that you hope that a good fighter really dominates, but I don't think a lot of people would have picked Sabota to be a fighter to dominate anyone a couple of years back.
No, I rather surprising. I mean, like, we're talking about a dude that got beat by like, who was it? Paul Taylor at like UFC 99, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, that's it, like, and now he's coming back and he's winning fights and he's calling out Damian Maia. Like, yeah, no, just very surprising, and part of it probably is that Kennedy came in on short notice, but still good win for him. Good fight from guys who I don't think like really didn't obviously like we kind of drop off the name value like as soon as we drop off the name value cliff after the co-main event, but man, that the rest of this card really delivered.
Yeah. Probably the most lackluster fight on the card to kick off the main card was Nick Hein over Lucas Sajewski. That was really probably like, unfortunately, it's kind of the thing where, look to me, like Sajewski is just not athletically competitive, or let's see, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I realize it's not Sajewski, it's Sajewski maybe. Yeah. Anyway, Sajewski, I mean, and Hein just kind of faced with somebody who wasn't as athletic with him, just kind of coasted and took the easy decision, like got his work in, got his rounds in. It's a development fight for Nick Hein kind of thing.
That is exactly how I was gonna put it. Like, I think Hein, this was it, like partway through the first round, I think Hein figured out he pretty much had this fight and just decided to work on his out fighting, like his out striking, like for the rest of their fight.
Yeah.
And my other takeaway of this is, if you're gonna have the nickname Wookiee, you got to at least be over 6 feet.
Yeah, Sajewski is a pretty undersized Wookiee. It's got to be said.
Yeah, he's like a young Wookiee or like a midget Wookiee, but like, no, you can't be rocking. You can't be like completely hairless and like 5'8" and be calling yourself Wookiee.
It is a bit weird. I kind of need to know more about the I need to know
Origin.
more about the origins of that nickname.
Maybe he does a really great Chewbacca impression.
He
I
could
mean,
maybe that would be awesome. Like
yeah.
if he wins a fight, maybe we'll get to see his Chewbacca.
There we go.
Um, all right, so let's go back up down to the first prelims. Go back up. First up, Taylor Lapilus, Ulka Sasaki. Thoughts?
Outstanding performance. Lapilus really kind of busted out a pretty well developed like MMA striker game. Came out there, fought off the takedowns in the clinch, used the cage, popped back up, set up his range, and then just beat the snot out of Sasaki in that second round.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a great show of like the idea that now we're seeing raw prospects. When you see raw prospects coming into MMA these days, it seems like the raw strikers are now developing faster than the raw grapplers, or maybe not the raw wrestlers still, but faster than the grapplers. Whereas like 5 or 10 years ago, it was totally the other way around. It was like the BJJ guys were the guys that were coming in and instantly finding success at the high levels as they worked on rounding out their game. And now you see kids like Lapilus, who was basically known for, regionally, the book on him was not having any grappling game at all, any wrestling to speak of at all. And he's immediately developing those skills to a high enough level to win fights in the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen an established way to coach and develop guys into MMA striking games really emerge, and it has answered a lot of the problems that kind of those like the non-wrestler grapplers presented them, like the guys without like really high level deep wrestling, and those like gyms like for the most part haven't quite adjusted to that yet. And I think we're gonna, especially like we're talking about like a Japanese fighter, like the fighters out of Japan like really have had a hard time adjusting to that. Yeah, so it is fun to like see this like generation of fighters coming up with this kind of like the new wealth and like MMA coaching knowledge.
Definitely. So let's see. Then we got Magomed Mustafayev beat Piotr Hallman. That was I don't know. I feel like that was a fight maybe everybody expected, even those picking Hallman.
Yeah, no, it was Mustafa. Like he's gonna get a rough introduction to the unified rules and the way they score rounds in the unified rules at some point, because he's just way too willing to play guard. I was really happy to hear him in the post fight basically talk about how massively he underestimated Hallman's wrestling, because his lack of chain wrestling and the struggles he had in cage grappling were pretty obvious for like a good fighter. And I guess they said beforehand, they said that he spent most of his time training in Dagestan. And I mean, that is what Gooden said on the broadcast. And I think he very much needs to get over to the States. And
well, he was supposed to be going to ATT.
So yeah, no,
I'm not sure what happened there. That would be a good fit for him.
Because I guess he wanted to go to. They said that he wanted to go to Tiger, and then found out Hallman was training there, so went back home and trained there. And I think he needs to get into ATT and work with some of those guys and like really shore up some of his like more like high level geared game, because he's got the raw skills to be a pretty solid fighter in this division, like really good lightweight. And hey, this is the second straight fight he's won on a cut, so he pulled it out.
Well, when you deliver that kind of damage to your opponent, like that was the thing for me that I was happy about that stoppage, is that like when you're hitting a guy that hard and that regularly, that's not like it's not like a chance that he busted Hallman up and opened up those cuts. He was blasting Hallman with every shot.
And I think you said on the prospectus, but I mean, like Mustafa''s speed was really obvious in this fight. He had a big speed advantage, both like foot speed and then also hand speed. Like he was just getting off punches much faster than Hallman could.
And next up, Scott Askham looked a lot better against Antonio Dos Santos. Really reinvigorated his prospect look.
Yeah, I very much pegged this fight kind of like you guys did with this was either going to be Dos Santos finishing Askham in the first round or Askham dragging into deep waters. And, we got a really violent first round finish. It was just Askham just kneeing Dos Santos into next week.
Yep, that was a great fight. Noah Lahat beat Nicholas Backstrom. Controversial score. I don't think that it could reasonably. I think Backstrom won it, but I don't think Backstrom, like, I'm not upset about it because Backstrom really didn't win the fight.
No, I scored this one a draw. And I think a lot of people in the MMA Twitter sphere that I follow did, and I think it says a lot about MMA judging when everyone's like, I scored that fight a draw. There's no way the official decision is going to be a draw, but it probably should be a draw.
Yeah.
Lahat had the most decisive round. Nicholas Backstrom had, to a certain extent, the first round was fairly decisive for Backstrom, but Lahat just inflicted so much more offense on Backstrom in that second round that is the most important round of that fight. And the third round was kind of both guys taking position on each other. And if you had to push, like, Backstrom had positions longer. Lahat felt like he was being a bit more aggressive and Backstrom a bit more reactive and just grabbing the top position whenever he could in kind of like an oh thank God way. So like, I'm not upset about the decision, but I also don't think Backstrom like really deserved to lose 2 rounds of that fight.
No, he didn't. I don't think judging wise Backstrom lost 2 rounds, but I'm certainly not going to care. I'm not going to be like, oh, Backstrom got robbed. No, he got the piss beat out of him when the fight was actually forced slightly out of his comfort zone. You know, that's the truth. And that at that point, I'm not going to be really broken up about him losing. He's got work to do. He's a good prospect, but he has to figure out some things. And losses like this are going to force him to. Arnold Allen beat Alan Omer. I am so glad that I picked Arnold Allen because, man, he just refused to lose that fight.
That was, it was funny because I was kind of expecting this to almost be like it's a prospect getting beat up by still a young fighter, but definitely a more experienced fighter.
Yeah, much more experienced.
And it ended up like Allen flipped the script, man. He was getting his ass kicked and then just pulled out like a no-gi. Like it was a rear neck, it was a guillotine that he kind of turned into an Ezekiel from the front, like on an angle sort of thing. Like just snatched it up. Really good showing for Arnold Allen. I think his future's a bantamweight. Well,
he's gonna grow a lot. I mean, that's the thing, is that he's gonna grow into his frame a lot. So I could easily see him, if he's willing to just like keep fighting at featherweight, grow into the division. Because he's certainly not like he's not physically smaller than Omer. He's just got he's not as dense. He's not as thickly muscled, and he doesn't sit down on his strike. So he's not a real power. He doesn't have a lot of power to like push guys around.
Yeah, no, and so I'm on the fence about it because he obviously has some room to grow, and he looks like he's put on some mass since his last couple fights. But we'll see. I mean, like he looked pretty. I mean, he looked good in spurts in this fight. He put up a pretty good effort considering he came in on super short notice. I'm going to be really interested to see what he looks like with a full training camp. Excited to have him in the division. I think you and I both agree. I mean, he's a good fighter.
Yeah, he is a good fighter, and
good fighter, good prospect.
I mean, what's the biggest thing is like that you really see is that that desire to not just lose. You know, it's that ability to stay dangerous all fight.
Yeah.
Then we saw Mairbek Taisumov in what I would say was the best performance of his career.
Yeah, that was textbook how to take apart a flashy, less technical striker.
Yep.
Like Taisumov broke him down, just started establishing really great counters and everything, and then just stopped Alan Patrick like cold every time he tried to come forward with anything. And then like clipped him with that head kick, which is like that perfect like tiny surface area for all that force to be imparted. Like the edge of the shin just clipping like the little top of the head and just went down. It was a great performance by Taisumov. 2 absolute beatings he's handed out in his last 2 fights. And this one against a far more legitimate opponent than who was it? Christian Adulu?
Christodoulou, yeah. Yeah, I mean he hasn't this is like, you know, he had an ugly fight with Tai-Hun Bang, lost to Michel Prazeres. And then he beat Bandel, who's, I think, already gone from the UFC, and Christodoulou, who does not look ready to be in the UFC. Patrick is the first guy that not only of UFC caliber, that not only has he faced, but just dominated.
Yeah.
And that's a huge jump for him from, like, I mean, that already makes it, like, you know, a lot of people are talking about him as, like, a title challenger. And I don't know if I'm you know, these are the kind of performances he has to have to legitimize that talk. Like, he has to have more fights like this.
Yep, and it's got to be against progressively higher levels of competition, but it was good. It was a good
Yep.
start for him.
And then, my God, how can you not love Mr. Finland? He's quickly becoming one of those fighters that the UFC and Reebok, quite frankly, because now they're just kind of strange bedfellows in fighter promotion. They need to start pushing Amir Khani because people are, he seems like a guy who is immediately captivating people.
People love him, and there's no reason not to. I mean, the dude can fight. I don't think he's championship caliber, but he doesn't have to be.
No,
He's exciting, and he gets in there, and he's personable. He's relatable. And people think he's funny, and he can also apparently, man, he showed he can make people cry today. I mean, he's got the full range.
yeah.
He's gonna be big for the UFC.
And I
Really,
mean the thing too, like why I remember I compared him to Chael Sonnen somewhat, is that maybe he'll never and Sonnen was a multi-time title challenger. Is maybe he'll never win a belt. He might talk his way to a title or sort of win over a lot of fans to get to that shot. But he also, in that same vein, like he is an elite athlete. Like he is a big athletic step above most fighters, and that is going to carry him a long way.
yeah, no, like I said, I don't think he's championship quality.
Yeah.
He's definitely top 10 quality.
Yeah.
He could definitely hang out in the top 10 of featherweight, have some really fun, interesting fights, and get himself into some title shots. But you put him in there against the top crust of the division, obviously bad things are going to happen to him, but people will tune in and watch, and he'll make it interesting. He'll make it fun. Yep. I think he's genuinely more likable in a lot of ways than Chael too.
Yeah.
Chael had a lot of charisma, but he was really more skilled at getting people fired up one way or the other. I feel like Arcani brings Amir Khani brings everyone in under his tent.
Oh yeah, no, I don't mean he's not divisive in the same way that Sonnen was, but he's just he has that same magnetic attraction. It's the same thing that we see out of fighters like Conor McGregor and stuff like that. And Anderson Silva, once Anderson Silva really sort of realized that nobody was about to take his spot at the top of the world before he lost to Weidman for 2 or 3 years. Anderson Silva was just showing up in the blank mask and messing around and having a good time. It's sort of that irresistible personality thing that tends to draw eyes and interest.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, and his whole thing with the mom today was great. I mean,
Yeah.
people really responded to that, so it was a really fun thing. He's the kind of dude that he's gonna get beat, and it's gonna be where the guy feels terrible for beating.
Yeah. It definitely seems like that. They really they did a good job to bring him in. He's got some wins over some legit prospects. He's the kind of guy who can surprise people because he's tricky and crafty and does some interesting stuff. So it'll be fun to watch him. That's us running through the whole card. Do you have any final thoughts on this? I think it was really kind of it was a star-making card if the UFC can take the performances on it and advertise them and run them and actually use them to make stuff.
This is what Fight Pass cards should be. This is it. The only improvement you could make is maybe take the main event and co-main event and make an hour and a half somewhere on television out of it. But this is what Fight Pass cards should be. A bunch of really good young fighters that you're trying to get cage time for. And if this is where the UFC is going with Fight Pass, this will be very exciting, because I think our biggest complaints about especially when the UFC goes to Europe or things like that, is not that they're getting they're getting regional fighters, but they're getting B and C level regional fighters. They skip over the much better regional fighters.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this was exactly what Fight Pass needs to be, and I enjoyed the hell out of this card.
It was a lot of fun. All right, well, that's it for us. You can find Tom on Twitter at TP_Grant. You can find me on Twitter at DZaneSimon. You can find both of us at Bloody Elbow. Once again, remember to give this video a like and subscribe to MMA Nation. That all helps us out immensely. And we'll be back with Knuckle Up and the Care Don't Care and the Vivisection and Prospectus. All that to focus on UFC Fight Night, rapidly changing UFC Fight Night 70, which has had 12 fighters got their visa, could not get their visas, so the UFC is scrambling on that. The Machida Romero headliner is still stable at the top of the card, so that alone makes it still something the UFC is gonna stay with. But they are changing that card by the moment.
A
So
2-fight card.
I mean, with Machida Romero, I would still watch it happily.
Oh
But
yeah. Yeah, maybe they just mix and match and do like a whole bunch of catchweight fights, and we get like open weight classes for like the first time in like 20 years in MMA.
there you go. That could be it. So we'll have breakdowns for all that if you stick with us. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and see you next week.